Do you know that song, it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas? It's one of the popular Christmas carols, if you will, that's out there. And I think the irony is that for me, Christmas does, I know what they mean. There's green and red and gold everywhere, and there's trees, and there's angels and bells, and there are things that we associate with the way Christmas looks. But maybe even more than that, there is a sound to Christmas. You don't have to go very far to hear a different sound in the air. One of the things that I love about the commercialization of Christmas, I think nothing's just completely bad, is that the Christian Christmas hymns are everywhere, and people know them. People know the stories because of those hymns. I ate with some friends this week that want very little to do with church, and as they often do, they tease me about Jesus in a very friendly way, and they made baby Jesus jokes because they know the story. And the reason they know the story, they've never been to church before very much, but they know the story because of our hymns that are just everywhere in the holiday season. And I don't like all of the commercialization of Christmas, but I love the fact that people know these stories because of the hymns. I'm a realist as a preacher, and I realize that a good song will last you a lot longer than most of the good sermons. If you talk about what people remember about churches and their church experience, a lot of times it's far more a song than a sermon. I think one of the reasons is why is because you hear the songs repeatedly. In a good sermon, you might hear it once. Hopefully we'll repeat some of the same good message points, but the hymns of Christmas are just a big part of who we are and what we do. And I think they're just really powerful, and they're everywhere. I won't tell you who, but one of the people that works in our church office since the day before Christmas has listened to Christmas traditional Pandora radio for the last month. You wouldn't think there was an old softie in the office, but there it is. And it's not me, I'll give you that other hint. But it's just everywhere. There's all these worship wars about whether we should sing new songs or old songs, and a lot of churches really wrestle with that. I wrestle with the fact that I like a lot of the secular Christmas songs. One of my favorites is Last Christmas I Gave You My Heart. It's a very cheesy song by Wham. I love that song. And in fact, I will tell you this, one of the worst things that I should never admit I own the Hilary Duff Christmas CD, and her version of that song is the worst Christmas CD of all time. Her version of that song, she rocks. It's very, very good. I like some of those. But I like the Christian hymns far better. And I like the classic Christian hymns where it comes to music. I think the reason why is because the theology is so good. One of the hymns we did today was by Phillips Brooks, who's one of the great Anglican preachers. One of them was by Martin Luther. It used to be the preachers and the theologians were the ones writing the hymns, and you have all this great, heavy theology simplified into a beautiful, simple lyric, and I love that. I love the fact that we know the hymns. Despite that there are advantages. One of the advantages, the hymn that struck me this year is "Hark the Herald Angels Sing." And I looked it up online, and there's a Christian music site that did the 10 best versions of that song ever. Amy Grant finished first, in case you're interested. But the thing that fascinated me was the Oak Ridge Boys were on there. Mahalia Jackson was on that list. And you can't get much difference between Amy Grant and Michael W. Smith are near the top of the list. Oak Ridge Boys, Mahalia Jackson, and Charlotte Church. It's all over the board because we have all these versions of these songs. And all those appeal to different markets, different people who like different tastes. And I think there's a wonderful thing because there's no copyrights on them, so anybody can sing them. And they're everywhere. And I think that's wonderful. The thing I don't like about the old hymns is sometimes they use language that just doesn't resonate. I was taught by a great preacher that if I wouldn't use the language in front of the cashier at the grocery store, I shouldn't use it in the pulpit. Who are you trying to impress with your flowery language? And I think there's a lot of truth to that. If I'm trying to communicate, I typically try to use relatively simple words, or if not, if I'm using a specific one, I'll define it. But that's why I want to talk about "Hark the Herald Angels Sing." I've never in my life said "hark" to anyone. I wish I did. I need to incorporate that into my vocabulary. I would like to be in the midst of a heated argument, which unfortunately as a preacher you don't get into those as much as you did when you were younger, but I would love to say "hark" and then say something very profound. That would be great. I need to put that on my bucket list. In fact, somebody get in a fight with me after the service so I can do it. And remind me that I need to do that because I'll have forgotten by then. But all it means is listen. Charles Wesley wrote the hymn, who was a great Anglican. His brother John is famous for founding the Methodist Church, even though he himself never became a Methodist. Listen, he wants you, from the very beginning of the song, to get your attention. Listen to this. And then the next line in the title is the herald angels sing. And another word that is not in my vocabulary is the word herald. Just don't use that word. Charles Wesley lived in the 18th century at the very end of the movement of heralds. But all a herald is somebody who proclaims good news, an important message. And what he's doing is he's focusing in on one little part of the Christmas story, which is that angels proclaim the birth of Christ. And he envisions what they say. And I think a lot of it comes from this passage in Luke that I'm going to read. It's a very familiar passage from Luke chapter 2, verses 8 to 14. In the same region, shepherds were staying out in the fields and keeping watch at night over their flock. Then an angel of the Lord stood before them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. The angel said to them, "Don't be afraid, for look, hark," I like that better, "I proclaim to you good news of great joy that will be for all the people. Today a Savior, who is Messiah the Lord, was born for you in the city of David. There will be the sign for you. You will find a baby wrapped snugly in cloth and lying in a manger." Suddenly there was a multitude of the heavenly host with the angel praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest, and peace on earth to people he favors." It's a beautiful scene where just random shepherds are out in the field, and all of a sudden an angel proclaims something to them, and before anyone knew it, an entire heavenly host is there singing in the background. And I think what's going on here is that Charles Wesley, in envisioning this scene, just wants to focus on what it must have been like to be those angels and what it must have been like to listen to what they had to say. We had beautiful music there. We had 3 specials, and we'll have sung 3 hymns, and they were the 5 that have been done so far, and I think I can speak to the invitation hymn would be wonderful. But I can't imagine how wonderful angelic hymns would be, and I think that's what he is capturing here. He wants to think about this moment when all of the earth stood still, in this peaceful night when God intervened. And he wants to take pause with that. It's a bad illustration. It's the best one I have for this. But I have a friend who loves this movie called Anchorman. And I don't know if you've ever seen Anchorman, but that's okay if you haven't. It's kind of a raunchy comedy. But he's seen it so many times that he decided to watch the thing through one time, looking at one character. There's a guy that's played by Steve Carell named Rick Tamlin, and Steve Carell is a improv actor. So when Steve Carell is not the focus of the scene, he is interacting with the scene and doing things that are ridiculous. And most of the time you would never notice that unless you literally watch the movie looking at that one character. And I don't know that my friend is not the only person in the world who's ever taken the time, which is a total waste of time, by the way. You might enjoy a waste of time, to do this and view Steve Carell's artwork. But I think that's the way there always is. There's always somebody when you take a picture in the back that's doing something in response, and that may not be the focus. I don't know if you do this with your phone, but if you take a picture with your phone now, there's many things you can do. You can change the brightness, the sharpness, but one of the things you can do is you can pick a point on your picture and it will focus into that item, and it blurs the rest of the picture. And if you're taking a picture of one thing, it's beautiful. And I think what we do here is that the scene is about this angel talking to these shepherds, and in the background, what's been focused out is those angels. And Charles Wesley, this moment is just captured, and he wants to put it into song, what it would be like just watching those people. And I want you to think about that for just a minute. You're not the shepherd. You're not the guy telling the shepherd. You're not the baby in the manger. But all your job to do on that day is just to sing. And that may be, I hope we get that job sung in heaven, even though I can't sing a lick. I'm pretty sure the next life I will be given a better voice. God auto-tune, that's what I'm saying, my vision of heaven. And I think that's worth thinking about. Because every time Jesus comes, there is a herald. Before his birth, the angels come and say, hey, by the way, this guy's coming. There's going to be a star. There's going to be a baby wrapped up in rags. It's going to be sleeping in a trough. And you'd be hard-pressed to find a baby wrapped in rags sleeping in a trough. I mean, most people, if they could afford it, would take better care of the kid. Not the way you would expect the king of the world to come. And when he gets older, he becomes a public minister. before he steps foot out in your Sunday school lessons, if you're in our Sunday school classes, did this last week, the herald before he becomes a minister is John the Baptist. This guy is coming. Every time Jesus comes, God employs a herald to tell that he's coming. Jesus doesn't pop up out of nowhere. Somebody says, by the way, this guy's probably going to come. You can expect this. And I want to talk today about the three things that heralds accomplish. One is a sense of anticipation. Can anybody do a drum roll sound? Anybody? Cliff, you got a drum roll?
Got a roll?
Okay. If I said drum roll, please, and somebody, that's not bad drum roll. I'm going to do drum roll. You would think I would say something important after that. You draw attention to it. It builds anticipation. In the rap circles, there's the hype man that before the artist comes out, they get the crowd up. If you go to a talk show, it's like this too. If, let's say, for example, if you went to the Ellen DeGeneres show, I don't know why you do that. Is this the Ellen show now? Or any of those shows, somebody's going to come out before the show's ever taped. It would probably be a comedian to get the audience engaged. Because you want a hot audience before you get out there. You want to build anticipation. You want to get people in the right frame of mind before the star comes out. Because you don't want them to do all the work themselves. We sort of do that here. I hate reducing to that simplistic form. But I use a lot of humor in the early parts of the service. And when Cliff sings a special like Silent Night before the service, we hope that we calm back down and refocus. You want somebody in the right frame of mind. When you do this. I view this as a prize fight. I wrote this down because it's one of my favorite scenes in movie history, Rocky IV. Rocky IV is the one where Rocky fights the Russian. And this is the introduction of Apollo Creed. In the blue corner, weighing 221 pounds, the former heavyweight champion of the world, the dancing destroyer, the king of Sting, the Count of Monte Cristo. Rocky intervenes. Yo, you think you got enough names? And Apollo says, patience, dummy, almost done. And the announcer continues, the master of disaster, the one, the only, Apollo Creed. They want people to be excited about Apollo Creed because he's fighting in a heavyweight championship match. So you get somebody out there to build him up and let the crowd get excited. Shouldn't have to do that himself. You want somebody to be ready for them. That's what the herald angels are all about in some ways. It's getting you to have a sense of anticipation. And I think it's this exciting message. The thing that you may not realize is this hymn, Hark the Herald Angels Sing, was written in 1739. And when Charles Wesley wrote the hymn, it was slow and solemn. And it was almost a dirge, a funeral song. And I'm glad that his preaching buddy, George Whitefield, changed some of the lyrics. And they attached it to a popular song by Mendelssohn. He wrote this churchy hymn, and they attached it to essentially a pop music song and made it the hymn that we know today. And I'm glad they did that. I think music and anything works better in collaboration. And somebody thought to tell Charles Wesley and all of his brilliant songwriting wisdom, and I mean that very sincerely, one of the greatest hymn writers of all time, this is a happy song. This is uplifting. That's what's going on. Glory to God in the highest, and peace on earth to the people he favors. This is great news. We should be excited that the baby is coming. And I think that's one of the things that sometimes we miss in church. I love when kids do anything at this church for a lot of reasons. One is I love kids. I think kids have great life in them. In fact, the great Baptist minister Carlisle Marnie, when he would see any kid in his church, would bend down to one knee and look them in the eye and say, I hope I capture some of the magic that's in kids. And I think there's definitely truth to that. But one of the things I love about kids is I have no idea what they're going to do. I love seeing Allie and Lakin in the choir loft because anything could happen. Anything. And that's the way church should be. We should have a sense that something great just might happen today. And that's one of the herald's jobs, is to present the fact that something good might happen today. We are people who believe in God. And so I hope when you wake up in the morning, there's at least the possibility in your mind that maybe God might do something miraculous today, something great in my life. That's part of the job of the herald, is to create anticipation. Another part of the job is preparation. When Jesus is born in a manger and is wrapped in rags and thrown in a trough, and it looks like it's just some poor guy whose family can't afford anything is in a manger. And I want you to grasp that point, that God could have sent God's Son anywhere in the world, and God chooses to send him to poor people in the sticks who can't afford much of anything. And there's something powerful in that statement. Something very powerful that God would do that. God doesn't value maybe the same things we do. But even though it does not appear it, God is sending the King of the world into the world at that point. And when a king comes, you best be prepared. I don't mean to get political, but let's just transport this back into a time when it's a little bit less vitriolic. Let's say we're living in 1945 and FDR is president. And we're in war, so everybody's pretty much behind the president. We have a president we all are behind at one time. I would hope if FDR came to our church and we knew in advance, what would we do if the president was coming at that moment? I know that on the Thanksgiving service, when we had people we didn't know, we knew they were coming to this church, we did a phenomenal job of cleaning this church. All hands were on deck, we cleaned, we prepared, and we wanted to put our best foot forward. When these heralds come, they tell you that Jesus is coming so that you put your best foot forward. You are preparing for something important. You're preparing for the arrival of a very important, the most important event the world has ever had. And the thing I want you to know about preparation is that whoever's preparing you is always preparing you, not just to brace yourself, which is important, because I would be a little bit shocked if Obama walked in today. I'd be happy, but I don't know why he'd be doing here. You want to not just brace yourself for something great to happen, but you are always called to do something. When the angels come in Matthew to the Magi, the magicians, we call them wise men sometimes, but the astrologers is more or less what they were. Their job was to follow the star. It wasn't just, the king of the Jews is coming. It was, no, the king of the Jews is coming, go and see him. So they get their gold and their frankincense and their myrrh, and they head off on the road. Shepherds, hey, Jesus is coming. They don't just sit there and go, oh, that's nice. Hey, the baby's coming. Let's get back to these sheep in the fields. No, they go and they see Jesus. When you're prepared for something, it's not just brace. It's let's do something. Let's do something because the King is coming. I don't know what God is calling you to do or preparing you to do this morning, but I would advise you that the best thing that you can do to prepare for the King is coming is to do unto the least of these. That's a repeated thing that we talk about, but Christmas is a time that's wonderful for most of us. Some of us are in mourning, and it's not the happiest time, but most of us will be in a heated home with a good meal at least, with fine clothes to keep us warm, and not everyone has that. So if I knew Jesus was coming tomorrow, and I wanted Jesus to catch me in the act of doing something, well, helping out the poor would probably be what I would be doing right now. The herald makes you have anticipation, or hopefully builds a sense of anticipation that something great could and will happen. The herald prepares you to do something in response to that. But I think there's always the people that the herald is there for the purpose of introduction. Introducing a new idea to somebody. Because if somebody came into this church right now and said, the King is coming, my general response would be, the King of what? An African king could come into this congregation right now, and not only would I have no idea that he was a king, you'd have to debrief me quite a bit. World politics are not my strong suit. Some people just had never heard of the King. Some people have never heard of Jesus. And you think everybody's heard of Jesus, but what if they haven't? There's a note in our men's Sunday school class, and I'll butcher the paraphrase, but it's everybody that's ever found Jesus came from some form of evangelism. If you've heard of Jesus, it's because somebody at some point took the time to tell you. And that's worth remembering. The herald introduces people. These shepherds in the field did not know and would have not thought to look for the King of the world in a manger. It wouldn't have occurred to them. And those wise men would have probably seen something good in that star, but they might not have known exactly what to look for or what was going to happen. Somebody had to tell them, oh, by the way, that up there, you'll find the King of the Jews under that thing. Sometimes the heralds are there just as a person to make an introduction. And I want you to think about how you would introduce Jesus to someone. I have different groups of friends, and a lot of times they don't socialize in the same circles. And it's very interesting. The people that I have to introduce the most, I have patented introductions that I give. And they're almost always complimentary. One of my friends, Amanda, that I eat with every couple of weeks, she once said, I don't want to meet your girlfriends. And I said, why don't you want to meet them? And she goes, because you make them all sound perfect, and I'm just not perfect. And I said, no, man, it's okay. When I tell them about you, you sound very perfect too, so it's okay. It's a perfect society. If you've never heard about Jesus, or if somebody's never heard of him, how would you tell them about him? I'm going to pull from a very obscure source on this, but there's a comedian today named Steve Harvey who's very famous. He was in the original Kings of Comedy, has his own TV show, and there's a bit that he does in every single act that is not funny even in the least. But Steve Harvey is a Christian, and he wants people to know that. And the way that he relates to people to Jesus is this. He talks about a ring announcer like I did with Rocky. And he says, if Jesus is coming back, I hope that I get the job of introducing Jesus. I hope I can tell the world who he is, and this is how I would do it. It is my honor to introduce a man who needs no introduction. His credits are too long to list. He's done the impossible time after time. He hails out of a manger in Bethlehem, Jerusalem by way of heaven. His mother is still headlining in the Catholic Church today. His daddy is the author of a book that has been on the bestseller list since the beginning of time. He holds the record for the world's greatest fish fry. He fed 5,000 hungry souls with 2 fish, 5 loaves of bread. He can walk on water, turn water into wine, no special effects, no camera tricks. He has a headshot on every church across the country. Even before the King of Comedy, he was hailed the King of all kings, ruler of the universe, Alpha and Omega, the bright and morning star. Some say he's the Rose of Sharon, and some say he's the Prince of Peace. Get up on your feet, put your hands together, and show your love for the second coming of the one and only Jesus Christ. That's how we ought to introduce somebody to Jesus. With enthusiasm, to build a sense of anticipation in them, to prepare them for what is to come.